Sam, when interacting with someone as important as you are, I try to exercise the virtue of brevity. Buckminster Fuller did not find brevity to be a virtue. He believed in explaining things at great length. Understanding what happened to me requires a great deal of understanding of the circumstances that I found myself in, the way that I was set upon, my legacy in history. My father was on Bush's ship in the Navy. I was a little boy from that fleet which dropped the little boy bomb on Hiroshima. And they earmarked me in revenge. I was kidnapped and tortured at a place called Fulton Elementary School in Pittsburgh as a very, very young child. And I went deaf. Letters were sent to me as a child hostage of a family named Mancine, which is like Manson Cinema. The sister, Neva Mancine, is mentioned in the letters from her attorney from Israel, Gail Burston. Neva is also the name of a Japanese pornographic company. The letters in question named Dee Dee's sister in arrangement explaining why they shot Martin Luther King. The letters appear to be the Texas school book. They're a justification for the AIDS attack that was clocked to a war game known as Two Virgins Pussy Ball. It was a parochial war game. For example, Dee Dee had lost her virginity when she seduced me for her attorney as a child. I was just a little boy when they attacked me and tortured me. Greg Carl wrote, "The initial encounter of the X motive is tainted by the shadow of the adversary." This is the parochial's language about Dee Dee having already lost her virginity, tainted by the shadow of the adversary. So they lured me to Mount Desert Island in 1984. A man named Will Brum was working at Jackson Immunogenetic Laboratories for the Society of Human Ecology on Mount Desert Island. I met a girl who had a tattoo of the Grim Reaper pointing at her vagina and needle track. She came from a place called Maxwell House and the College of the Atlantic, run by the Society for Human Ecology. They were talking about a scheme to transform the human race by injecting the blood before AIDS happened. Well, I got into my cinema studies, in part because Cineast Film Quarterly were one of the only people who were willing to publish my letters, and Asian cult cinema magazines. And I looked at The Killers, starring Ronald Reagan, and Cruel Gun Story. They both have the same semiotic texture and symbolism and exact scene action that the Zapruder film has. And they were made from the end of the summer of 1963 and released in January of 1964. So they were being made while Kennedy was set up, and they include references to the Zapruder film. Cruel Gun Story was made in Japan. So I discovered that there was a mirror system. The mirror system for cinema began in Hitler's cinema. The mirror system of Hitler was adopted by this gang. It traces back to a counterfeiting den known as Fayum when Britain and Italy were allies after World War I. There, Gabriel D'Annunzio was in a confederacy with Italy to seize Fayum from Habsburg and Croatia. His disciple was a young man named Benito Mussolini, and another person who he strongly influenced and helped introduce to Mussolini was D.W. Griffith, whose gang made the burning cross for the KKK in the film Birth of a Nation. That was the gang that led the reassertion of the defeated after the Civil War with the Birth of the Nation. They did it again in World War II with the Red Scare. And the film that I looked at most was and hardest was Dangerous Journey, starring Errol Flynn and Reagan. And it's full of pro-Axis semiotic symbolism. So these people were allies of Britain and Mussolini after World War One, but they were also the founders of fascism. They were a spin-off group from fourth dimensional intelligence systems in the Cubist movement, like Ouspensky, whose magazine, The New Age, Osage's magazine, The New Age, in which Ouspensky appears, talks openly of a super production. And Houdini was around in those days. It was the days when Grand Central Station was being built, and the Ballet Russe of Diaghilev was introducing people like Picasso to Stravinsky and Sarah Bernhardt to D'Annunzio. And they had this idea land on their desks at all the same time. When Sergei Eisenstein was friends with Walt Disney, Disney was one young man discovering Adolf Hitler, making him into one of his characters of Donald Duck, and landed on their desks at the same time and disappeared into the room behind the revolving bookshelf because they adopted it. What was this idea? In a book about Leonevsky, an avant-garde Russian artist, it's identified as a fourth dimensional Superman conceived of by Ouspensky, whose gang Robert Fripp introduced me to, Pierre Elliott, who was with Gurdjieff during Vichy France occupation of by Germany, and that's one of the reasons I was shied off from that crowd, because they were probably collaborators to survive in Vichy France, as flamboyant as they were. And the crowd from Gurdjieff Society included the man who called me to Mount Desert Island, Will Zell-Brum, who was speaking of a scheme to transform the human race by injecting the blood from a time predating the appearance of the virus. Now, the semiotics in reference to the script, the Texas School Book, are in Diva, which also predates AIDS, and they are allusions to the Magic Christian from 1969, starring Peter Sellers and Ringo Starr, the collection plate allusion to the semiotic minstrelsy that was at work behind the scenes. So the three mirrors are the assassination of JFK over Hiroshima. That's in this international cinema system, the super production, the super story, as I used to call it before I found the writings of Ouspensky in New Age. And you can make a transcript of this and read it and verify these facts. The second mirror is the way that it was transferred to me as a little boy, and I was deafened in a revenge attack by Yoko Ono. And at first, I believed that the script was about the murder of John Lennon, but the person who wrote the script was never arrested. I was arrested. She appears on the cover of a 1979 record by King Crimson called Under Heavy Manners, by Robert Fripp, I should say, who was in the Gurdjieff cult. And she's playing violin. 20-foot likeness of her in Seattle Center. 20-foot likeness of her playing violin next to a geisha. Well, Midori Goto was the second virgin in the two virgins script. The people helping him don't understand the significance of the linguistic language system that's at work. Ronnie and Casper attacked me. Ronnie Zinsky attacked me as a child. That's like Ronald Reagan and Caspar Weinberg. I asked the Department of the Navy, how many people knew in 1974 that Ronnie and Caspar were going to be working together in the White House in 1980? They said not very many. Certainly not the car thieves in Highland Park or Pittsburgh, but Wattenmaker. Get that Wattenmaker. The person behind the nerve agent that was implanted in me, that was detonated with the help of Carnegie Mellon University to punish me for what they claimed was a negligence in the murder of John Lennon. This Wattenmaker person lived next door to me in Pittsburgh, was an Attica State Prison psychiatrist. So what happened in Seattle was they lied to my face. They pumped me full of psychiatric medicines, and they knew They absolutely knew the entire time that I had a rational basis for my concerns. They had Casper was like the friendly ghost, which brings us to the third mirror. They used Lazarus back from the dead, Casper, the friendly ghost. They used Bly Sanders, about whom the book Invention of Life was written. He was a literary genius who used literature to show the potentials of cinema. And I found him in the index of a Cubism book, looking for the truth about Axis cinema. His movie was made by both, one of his books was made into a movie by both the Axis and the Allies. And apparently he liked the Axis version better. But Bly Sanders is an assumed name that means like Phoenix, blaze from the ashes, back from the dead. Unruh was the name of the Secret Service agent out when Ronald Reagan claims he was shot. Who was there? Me. He came out and waved to me the night before. They had me with his Federal Emergency Management Agency attorneys from Israel. So they gave me a brochure that read, "There's no such thing as objective reality, only what the jury believes." Franklin Graham has a story in his book about a man they call Hitler. It was, they say, profession as his duties, executing Sandinistas for the Contras. Then he's now in their chaplain school. He changes his name to Lazarus. They say, why? He's a great chaplain. Hitler is a great chaplain. Why do you want to change your name to Lazarus? He says, because I'm back from the dead. Lazarus, Bly Sanders is like Phoenix, blaze from the cinders. And they have this form of blending Lenin's spirit with Hitler's spirit, and they call it Casper. And Yoko Ono and Peter Gabriel actually championed the man named Casper who tortured me. And so did the Pittsburgh unions. They championed the man who, anybody who in their right mind who knew how ferociously he forced my mother in tears beyond tears to sell her house and move by attacking me, making it possible for me to leave my house, realizes that this syndicate is dangerously criminally insane. They gassed me in a place called King's Estate. Get it? Gassed me, little boy, the King's Heavenly Estate. If that doesn't explain some of the things that I'm trying to justify taking some of your time and attention from, just don't watch um, anything that I've done, because it will only go into greater detail and show the system of imagery that's at work in the super production semiotic. But they're after a fourth dimensional Superman. And Lenin was given the dream job of pulling this Houdini. Their goal was a Mount Everest idea. Uh, why would you? They believed that by taking over media, you could control the world. And they told a story that's absolutely not true. Remember Dan Rather? That's in 1963. His career got off the ground in Dealey Plaza. And he says you could see it on YouTube. I saw his head go violently forwards, the very opposite of what he saw, but what you would rather believe. You would rather side with Yoko Ono than her victim, her prey. And Seattle knew that I had a rational basis, but they wanted to commit a fraud so they could repossess my paintings, for example. They knew I had value as a poet, and they did it to extort, to steal from me. One of the people I reported, John Schulman, to the post office in Pittsburgh, was protected by the post office, even though I said, watch out for him, he's committing mail fraud. I'm pretty sure you have to be very careful. He's collecting for rare books that he claims was lost, that weren't rare and weren't lost. They said, stop spreading rumors about distinguished people. He was caught in an $8 million museum heist. That's how much credibility the people I say I'm wrong have. In Seattle said I had schizophrenia, and they mistreated me so badly. Now I have Parkinson's. I'm losing my eyesight. I'm completely deaf. These people are criminally insane. Yoko Ono tortured me, and she had made no charge whatsoever. They never arrested Gail Burstyn. The woman who I supposedly didn't understand. And they're going to bring John Lennon back from the dead after from the ashes of Gaza.